Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. You are only 1 week away from a completely different life. Not 1 year, not 1 month, just 1 week. The only thing standing between you and that transformation is the decision to commit. And commitment, it starts today. Habit number 1, own your mornings, own your life. The way you begin your morning has the power to shape the entire course of your day. It's the foundation upon which everything else is built. If you wake up with purpose, energy, and discipline, you set yourself up for success. But if you start your day in chaos, procrastination, or negativity, you'll find yourself playing catch up before you've even had breakfast. The key is not just waking up early, it's about what you do with those first few hours that determines everything. For years, I thought mornings were just about getting up, brushing my teeth, and rushing out the door to face the day. I never gave much thought to how I started my mornings until I realized that the most successful people in the world had something in common: a structured morning routine. It wasn't about being a morning person or waking up at an absurd hour. It was about taking control of the start of each day. The first change I made was eliminating distractions. No more checking my phone the moment I open my eyes. No more scrolling through emails or social media first thing in the morning. I decided that my first thoughts would belong to me, not the outside world. Instead of letting other people's demands or negativity dictate my mindset, I chose to start with gratitude. Before even getting out of bed, I took a moment to appreciate life. The fact that I was breathing, that I had another day to work toward my goals, that was something to be thankful for. That small shift in mindset changed everything. Next came movement. The body and mind are connected, and if you want to be sharp, focused, and productive, you have to move. I didn't need a fancy gym or an intense workout, just some form of physical activity. A quick stretch, a few push-ups, or a short walk was enough to get my blood flowing and wake my body up naturally. Within days, I felt more energetic throughout the day. I no longer relied on caffeine to get me going. My body responded positively and my mind became sharper. After movement, I turned to my mindset. Instead of filling my head with negativity, I filled it with knowledge and inspiration. I spent 10 to 15 minutes reading something educational or listening to something motivational. It didn't have to be a full book, just a few pages, a podcast, or a speech that fed my mind with wisdom. I realized that the way I spoke to myself in the morning set the tone for how I faced challenges later in the day. If I started with doubt, I carried doubt. If I started with strength, I carried strength. Lastly, I set my intentions. Instead of letting the day control me, I decided what I would focus on. I wrote down my top priorities and visualized how I wanted my day to go. By the time I stepped out the door, I wasn't reacting to life. I was in control. And that control changed everything. Habit number 2, stop making excuses. Excuses are the silent killers of dreams. They creep in quietly, disguised as reasons, and before you know it, they have built an invisible prison around your potential. The moment I decided to eliminate excuses from my life, everything changed. It wasn't easy. It required brutal honesty. But once I took full responsibility for my actions, my mindset shifted, and I realized that I had been standing in my own way all along. For years, I told myself the same lies that so many people do. I don't have time. I'm too tired. I'll start tomorrow. The problem with these statements is that they feel real in the moment, but they are just stories we tell ourselves to avoid discomfort. The truth is, I had time. I was just wasting it. I wasn't too tired. I was unmotivated. And tomorrow was just an excuse to avoid taking action today. The first step in eliminating excuses was recognizing them for what they were: self-imposed limitations. I had to become hyper-aware of my own thought patterns. Every time I caught myself making an excuse, I stopped and questioned it. Is this really true, or am I just avoiding effort? 9 times out of 10, it was the latter. That level of self-awareness was uncomfortable at first, but it was also liberating, because once I acknowledged the problem, I could fix it. Next, I removed the option of failure from my vocabulary. When I committed to something, I had to follow through, no exceptions. If I said I was going to wake up early, I got up. If I said I was going to work out, I moved my body. There was no more debate. I realized that every time I gave myself the option to back out, I was reinforcing weakness. But when I followed through, I was reinforcing strength. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of doing hard things. I also made sure to replace excuses with solutions. Instead of saying, "I don't have time," I looked at my schedule and found time. Instead of saying, "I'm too tired," I adjusted my sleep habits so I had more energy. Instead of saying, "I don't know how," I started learning. Every problem had a solution. It was just a matter of whether I was willing to put in the effort to find it. Perhaps the biggest realization was that my excuses were keeping me stuck in the same place. I wasn't growing, I wasn't evolving, and I wasn't achieving my goals because I was giving myself permission to stay the same. The moment I took full responsibility for my actions, my progress skyrocketed. I stopped waiting for the perfect time and started creating the right time. I stopped looking for external motivation and started relying on discipline. By the end of that first week, I felt unstoppable. Not because I had reached my final goal, but because I had finally removed the mental roadblocks that had been holding me back for years. I no longer looked for reasons why I couldn't. I looked for ways to make it happen, and that made all the difference. Habit number 3, feed your mind like you feed your body. What you feed your mind is just as important as what you feed your body. Every thought, every piece of information, every conversation you engage in shapes the way you see the world, and more importantly, the way you see yourself. For years, I didn't realize how much mental junk food I was consuming. Social media distractions, negative news, mindless entertainment. It wasn't that those things were inherently bad, but they were keeping me from growing. The moment I decided to be intentional about what I allowed into my mind, everything changed. The first thing I did was replace passive consumption with active learning. Instead of scrolling through my phone aimlessly in the morning, I picked up a book. Instead of listening to gossip or irrelevant conversations, I listened to podcasts that challenged my thinking. Instead of watching meaningless content before bed, I spent that time reading something that added value to my life. Within just a few days, I noticed a difference. My thoughts became clearer, my focus improved. I felt inspired rather than drained. I also became extremely mindful of the voices I allowed into my life. We don't realize it, but the people we listen to shape our beliefs. If you constantly hear negativity, doubt, and complaints, you start to adopt that mindset. But when you surround yourself with wisdom, encouragement, and knowledge, your perspective shifts. I made it a habit to seek out mentors, role models, and thought leaders, even if I didn't know them personally. I studied their words, absorbed their wisdom, and applied their lessons to my life. Another powerful shift was becoming a student again. I stopped assuming I knew everything and started approaching every situation with curiosity. I read books on personal growth, finance, leadership, and mindset. I watched documentaries. I learned new skills. I didn't just passively take in information. I actively applied what I learned. And that's the key. Knowledge without action is useless. Too many people read books or listen to advice, but never implement it. I made sure that everything I learned was put into practice, even in small ways. At the same time, I had to eliminate toxic input. I cut back on social media. I unfollowed pages and people that brought negativity into my life. I limited the amount of news I consumed because I realized that constantly feeding my mind with fear, conflict, and bad news was not productive. Instead, I filled that space with things that empowered me. Perhaps the most powerful lesson was understanding that your mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant will grow. If you fill it with weeds, negative thoughts, distractions, and self-doubt, those weeds will take over. But if you plant seeds of wisdom, confidence, and growth, you will reap the rewards. In just 1 week of feeding my mind with intention, I noticed a shift. I was more optimistic, more driven, and more in control of my thoughts. And when you control your thoughts, you control your future. Habit number 4, protect your circle. The people you surround yourself with will either push you forward or hold you back. For years, I underestimated just how much my environment influenced my mindset, my habits, and ultimately my success. I used to believe that as long as I worked hard, I could achieve anything, no matter who I surrounded myself with. But the truth is, your circle determines your ceiling. If you're surrounded by negativity, complacency, and doubt, it will be nearly impossible to rise above it. But if you intentionally build a circle of people who challenge, inspire, and elevate you, your growth becomes unstoppable. The first step I took was an honest audit of my relationships. I asked myself, are the people in my life making me better or keeping me the same? That was a hard question to answer because it forced me to see the truth. Some of the people closest to me were also the biggest sources of negativity. They weren't bad people, but they had limiting beliefs, negative mindsets, and a habit of making excuses. And because I spent so much time with them, their energy was rubbing off on me. It was time to make a change. I didn't cut people off harshly or disrespectfully, but I created distance between myself and those who weren't aligned with my goals. I stopped engaging in conversations filled with gossip, complaints, or self-doubt. I stopped wasting time with people who had no ambition, no drive, and no desire to improve. Instead, I made it my mission to surround myself with winners, people who were working towards something, who had discipline, who inspired me to be better. Finding those people wasn't easy at first, but I realized that I didn't need to know them personally to learn from them. I could read their books, watch their interviews, listen to their podcasts, and absorb their wisdom. Eventually, I started seeking out individuals in my own life, mentors, coaches, and peers who had the mindset I wanted to develop. Being around them forced me to raise my standards. They didn't allow excuses. They didn't settle for mediocrity. They pushed me to level up, to think bigger, and to take action. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that your environment is stronger than your willpower. If you're constantly around negativity, no matter how disciplined you are, it will drag you down. But if you immerse yourself in a circle of high achievers, their energy, habits, and mindset will naturally elevate you. You don't even have to try, it happens automatically. Within 1 week of making this shift, my motivation skyrocketed. My conversations became more meaningful. My goals became clearer. My confidence grew because I was no longer surrounded by doubt and fear. I was surrounded by belief and ambition. The bottom line is this: if you want to change your life, change your circle. Find people who make you better, who push you, who challenge you. And if you don't have them yet, seek them out, because the company you keep is the future you build. Habit number 5, take action. Now, fear is the thief of progress. It disguises itself as logic, as hesitation, as the need for more time, but in reality, it's just another form of procrastination. For years, I found myself waiting for the perfect moment, waiting until I felt ready, waiting until I had everything figured out. And then one day, I realized something powerful. There is no perfect moment. There is only now. The biggest transformation happened when I decided to take action without hesitation. I stopped overthinking and started doing. Every time I felt fear creeping in, I reminded myself that action destroys fear. The more you wait, the bigger the task seems. But the moment you take that first step, everything starts to fall into place. One of the first things I did was remove the what if mindset. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if people judge me? These thoughts used to paralyze me. But then I flipped the question, what if this changes my life? What if this is exactly what I need to grow? Just that small shift in perspective gave me the courage to move forward. Next, I made a rule. If something takes less than 5 minutes to start, I do it immediately. No second guessing, no waiting. I applied this to workouts, difficult conversations, business ideas, and even personal projects. The goal was to build momentum because once you start, everything gets easier. I realized that starting was always the hardest part, but once I took action, I never regretted it. Another game changer was embracing failure as part of the process. The fear of failure had held me back for too long, but when I studied successful people, I realized something. They failed more than others, but they also tried more than others. The difference between winners and everyone else is that winners don't let failure stop them. They learn, they adapt, and they keep moving. So I stopped fearing failure. I told myself, every mistake is a lesson. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. The moment I embraced this mindset, I stopped overanalyzing every decision and just took the leap. And guess what? Things started working out. Maybe not always on the first try, but the more I acted, the more opportunities I created for myself. I also made a commitment to never leave a day without taking one step forward. No matter how small, no matter how insignificant it seemed, I made sure I did something that moved me closer to my goals, whether it was making a phone call, writing an idea down, practicing a skill, or networking with the right people. I made progress every single day. By the end of the first week, something shifted inside me. I no longer waited for the right time. I became the person who made things happen. And that's when I realized the truth. Success belongs to those who take action, not those who wait. These 5 habits, they aren't magic. They aren't some secret formula. They are simple, powerful decisions that separate those who dream from those who do. In just 1 week, I saw results. In 1 month, I felt unstoppable. In 1 year, I became a different person, and so can you. But only if you make the choice right now. Now go out there and make it happen.